This is the only video you need to begin taking control of your life, starting right now. Now is the perfect time to start believing in the unbelievable. More than that, I'm inviting you not just to believe, but to test it for yourself. I'm speaking to those of you who are currently doubting. Is it really possible to control your reality? Isn't the idea of reality creation just a fantasy with no real foundation? I strongly encourage you to watch this video until the end and begin experimenting immediately. In fact, save this video. This is the only one you'll ever need to return to again and again. To remind yourself that you are capable of changing your destiny. And we will begin today with the following statement. Where your attention goes, your energy flows. And that is exactly what becomes real, what takes root in your physical life. Let's unpack this idea from the very beginning. Most of us live in this world being absolutely convinced that the material world is all that exists. That it's the only thing we can interact with. Some of us already understand that the world is divided into the material and the non-material. That there are things we can touch and see. And there are things we call energy, energy that, in fact, shapes the world we live in. But I must correct that idea and say, there is no such thing as a material world in and of itself. We live in a world of energy and ideas. There is a world of ideas, the so-called world of information. And there is a world of energy. What we see as material reality is nothing more than energy organized by information. Let's accept one very important basic premise. Right now, in this very reality, with all its layers and variations, every possible version of your life already exists. Every outcome for the specific situation you are currently thinking about, working on, worrying about, or dreaming about, already exists. And so do all the possibilities for your life as a whole. If all versions already exist, then what is left for us to do? What remains is simply to choose. And choosing means directing our attention. And attention is information. Your thoughts are information. Your emotional state is information. And let me remind you, your body is the most powerful transmitter of information you possess. So, if the task is simply to choose your reality, the question becomes, how? The truth is, when something happens in our life that frightens or disturbs us, especially when it feels important, we immediately switch on our emotions. And then, our attention begins to jump around. Like a little monkey, running wherever our emotions send it. If we get scared, our monkey runs toward the fear. If we really want something, the monkey doesn't run toward the thing we want. It runs toward the fear of not getting it. You must understand. When we strongly desire something, we give it enormous weight. It becomes the center of gravity in our inner world. And that means many events, conditions, and aspects of our life become dependent on whether that desire is fulfilled. Now, if we deeply want something but are not taking consistent, confident action toward it, then, in the absence of real action and certainty, something else happens. Our attention begins to shift, not toward the desired result, but toward the fear of failure. Toward anxiety. Toward the thought, what if it doesn't happen? This is the first thing you must understand. If you are not consciously managing your attention and imagination, your inner monkey will simply follow your emotions, wherever they send it. And most of our emotions are survival-based. They are the ones most familiar to you. If you look at your life and ask yourself, what are the most familiar emotions or feelings I've lived with? I encourage you to take a sheet of paper and write them down. Look back at your past and ask, which emotions have been the recurring themes of my life? For some, it will be fear. For others, anxiety. Maybe resentment. Maybe self-doubt, guilt, or shame. Perhaps anger. Perhaps jealousy. Perhaps a sense of unworthiness. Of course, there are also positive ones, joy, trust, hope, anticipation. But unfortunately, in my work with audiences, I see that the most familiar and habitual emotions are often not the most pleasant or productive. So it's no surprise that our inner monkey, when something happens, runs straight toward the worst-case scenario. Toward what's scary, threatening, or upsetting. It runs to fear, to defensiveness, to helplessness. Let's return to the principle. Where your attention goes, your energy flows. And where your energy flows, that becomes your material reality. Let's imagine the universe, our entire reality, as a living garden. If energy flows, then let's imagine it as life-giving water. And this water, your attention, is the only water that exists in that garden. So what happens to a garden if it is not watered? It dries up. It dies. Now let's take the most important lesson from this analogy. If there's something in your life you do not like, stop watering it with your attention and your energy. Stop staring at it. Stop thinking about it. Stop analyzing it. Stop fantasizing about it. Because the more you do, the more you feed it, like weeds you don't actually want in your garden. So what should you do instead? Here's the good news. You are in control of your attention. And if you control your attention, you control your energy. And if you control your energy, you control what becomes real in your life. The solution is to consciously redirect your attention from what you dislike, toward what you would prefer. There are two main difficulties here. The first is this. Surprisingly often, people don't actually know what they do want instead. They don't take the time or make the effort to ask themselves the most important question. If I don't like this situation, how would I like it to turn out? That is the first major obstacle. The second difficulty is this. When something unpleasant appears in our life. When a potential problem appears on the horizon. When something frightening crosses our mind. We often feel like we can't take our eyes off it. We feel like we must keep it in sight. For example, imagine that someone in your workplace is acting against you. You start thinking, what might they be saying behind my back? What might they do to harm me? Whom might they turn against me? What if they hurt me directly? What if they're constantly thinking badly of me? And very often, all your attention begins to revolve around this one person. If you are in any way vulnerable to them, or if something important to you, like a peaceful atmosphere at work, is under threat, then this situation can easily become the center of your emotional world. And what happens then? As you can imagine, nothing pleasant. If you want to resolve such a situation, you must intentionally withdraw your attention from it. Don't think about this person. Don't imagine what they might be saying behind your back. Don't give any weight to them or to the possibility of bad things happening. Now, someone might say, but what if I missed the moment when I could have done something? What if I missed the chance to prevent it? That's a valid point. We're not talking about ignoring obvious, concrete events. If a person actually does something unpleasant to you, then of course you should respond appropriately. Stand your ground. Take whatever action is needed to protect yourself. What I want you to understand is the difference between the material world and the world of information. In the material world, you take action. You behave appropriately in the real situation. But the world of information is what creates reality. And information means how you feel, what your body is experiencing, and, most importantly, what's going on in your head. Your imagination. Your thoughts. What you choose to focus on. These things are all connected. What you dwell on in thought affects how your body feels. And how your body feels influences what kinds of thoughts you tend to repeat. So once again, you act according to circumstances in the material world. But you remove, as much as possible, any emotional charge from the situation. You act from a place of trust. You act with the awareness that you have the right to live a life that is peaceful, joyful, pleasant, and easy. And when you do this, you will begin to notice one of three things happening. Either you suddenly realize there was no threat at all, that the whole thing was imagined or exaggerated by your mind, or you notice that the source of the problem quietly leaves your life, or you see the entire situation transform. Especially if you've chosen to replace conflict with understanding and kindness. Suddenly, that becomes your reality. And I assure you, even the things your logical mind cannot comprehend today, even the things it refuses to believe are possible, as soon as you begin to allow a different reality, and begin to lead yourself gently toward it, the impossible begins to become possible. Now let's look at a different kind of situation. Suppose you currently have no income. Maybe you've lost your job. Maybe your resources have run out. Bills are coming in. You have nothing to pay with. You go to the store and realize you can't buy groceries. You automatically slip into a state of fear. Your attention turns toward imagining all the worst-case scenarios. So what should you do? The first step in redirecting attention is to become aware of what you are mentally rehearsing. What are you imagining, with emotion, with feeling? And to redirect your attention, you must know where to direct it instead. This brings us back to the very first question we asked. What do you want to create instead? People often try to escape a difficult situation, but they never actually define what they want to move toward. So instead, they unconsciously move toward another difficult situation. If you only want to get out of something, it will be extremely difficult, because you haven't chosen what you want instead. So, spend at least 10 to 15 minutes taking a sheet of paper and writing down the situation you want to create. Describe in detail what your desired reality looks like. If that means having a job, write it. If that means feeling complete peace when you pay your bills, write that. If that means increasing your income, or raising your quality of life, write all of that too. Add any details that matter to you. And please, don't be stingy. This is your reality. This is your attention. It doesn't matter whether what you imagine is modest or wildly optimistic. It works. It does its job. Of course, if something is so foreign, so unrealistic to you that you absolutely cannot believe it, then your attention won't stay there. You'll stop looking at it. And without faith, attention doesn't work. So, you've withdrawn your attention from what you don't want. You've redirected your imagination, your thoughts, your attention toward what you do want. But, without forgetting that you live in the material world, you also take the necessary steps in real life. Maybe you look for temporary work. Maybe you review your expenses and reduce some of them for now. Maybe you ask someone for help. Maybe you take other small steps. Now I must tell you something important. If you just close your eyes and say, "Nope, I don't see the problem, therefore it doesn't exist. I'll just think happy thoughts." That can work, but only if your faith is absolutely pure. If you are truly not worried. If you have no inner dialogue about consequences. If you're not escaping into daydreams while your real situation keeps getting worse. If your faith is that crystal clear, then yes, it will work. But for the vast majority of people, 99.99%, you must take at least some steps, so that you know you are not doing nothing. Otherwise, anxiety increases. Self-criticism intensifies. Doubts creep in about whether a happy outcome is even possible. So my advice to almost everyone is this. Focus your attention, your energy, on what you want to create. And at the same time, calmly and without unnecessary emotion. Take the actions you can take today to change your situation tomorrow. This is where self-awareness becomes vital. You must be able to notice when your so-called trust is actually avoidance. When your anxiety is growing because you're not doing anything. If you catch yourself saying, "I'm doing nothing again. I'm not moving forward. I'm just hiding from this. Then sit down and ask. What steps can I take today? Remove the emotional drama from it. Stop ruminating. Stop worrying. Stop scaring yourself. Shift your attention back to your ideal situation. Choose it again. And now, picture that great magical garden. With your attention, you literally bring that part of your reality to life. It becomes material. It begins to grow where your attention flows consistently. You'll notice that problems begin to dissolve quickly. Once you stop getting emotionally entangled in them. And once you take even the smallest practical steps to resolve them. Quietly, calmly, with the confidence that everything will be fine. And now you may be wondering. But how do I know it will be fine? My answer. Only you decide whether it will be hard or easy. Only you decide whether a problem will linger or disappear quickly. And sometimes, it will disappear with almost no effort at all. But here's the key. Problems dissolve easily only when you are truly willing to take action if needed. When you know that you'll do whatever it takes. And at the same time, you are not worrying. Your attention is already directed toward where you are going. And whatever you no longer feed with your attention. Whatever you no longer imagine, no longer fear. Dries up like a plant with no water. It soon disappears from your life. Until, of course, you start feeding it with attention again. The beautiful truth is this. At absolutely any moment, no matter what's happening. No matter how unpredictable, how overwhelming, how scary, or how out of your hands it seems. You still have the power to choose. You have the right now, to choose a different experience. At any moment of your life, you are the creator. So I'll ask you this. Why don't you choose something better? Why do you keep fighting? Why do you keep fearing? Why do you keep doubting? Why do you keep postponing the chance to see for yourself? That your reality is shaped by you. I sincerely hope you'll save the link to this video. Come back to it whenever you need to put everything back in order. Whenever you need to reclaim your power. You will inevitably receive your own proof, as soon as you try. And now, it's time for inner work. I ask you, right now, to take one situation in your life. Something you have felt stuck in. Something you believed could not be resolved easily. Something you thought you'd have to suffer through for a while. What is that situation? The next step. If you are ready to live more lightly, ask yourself. How do you want this situation to be resolved? Or, how do you want this area of your life to change? What kind of tomorrow do you want to see? And finally, ask yourself. Why are you holding on to the difficulties in your life? What do they give you? Maybe you're afraid of being punished for living with ease. Maybe you think you won't be a good person unless you suffer. Maybe you simply don't know what you'd do with yourself. If this problem suddenly disappeared. Ask yourself. What is keeping me chained to this problem? And I kindly invite you to write your answer in the comments. All the best.